give people a chance, but cover some stuff. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? Are there any additions, subtractions? The one thing I'm going to add under leadership at the bottom is I want to talk about changing the scheduling of our meetings from starting in February to starting in January. So I'm going to add that under leadership. Anybody else have any changes to the agenda?
I was just going to add a brief comment regarding what transpired at today's meeting of the Government Operations Committee regarding advisory committees on assessment review. Doesn't require any action, just a point of information, which I can interject at the appropriate point.
Why don't we put that in after the county administration report?
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? I guess we'll move on to minutes. Has everyone had a chance to look at the October minutes? Anybody have any changes, suggestions, complete rewrites? I'm seeing none, so I guess we're going to accept the minutes as is.
We got motions.
Okay, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll move it.
I see Robert, second. I see Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Looks like that was unanimous from what I'm seeing. So report from county administration. Do we have someone to do the report? Lisa?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Mhm.
Just a brief report, and we had an elected officials call this morning. So those of you who are on that call, this will be largely a repeat. Just have a few quick updates. Just to notify the group that the county legislature's Community Recovery Fund Committee held 3 meetings in November to discuss and vote on projects for funding. And their next meeting is going to be on December 5th. All the minutes and materials from those meetings can be found on the county's website. A note to encourage you to share with your communities the Tompkins County Broadband Assessment Survey, which can be found on www.tompkinsbroadband.com. And by now, you all should have received a survey from Dominic Recchio, our communications director, regarding New York State Executive Order 18, Prevention and Response to Targeted Violence and Domestic Terrorism. It's a survey that's due tomorrow, Friday, by the end of the day. And please refer to your emails for details and instructions on how to access the specific link for your organization. And feel free to contact Dominic if you have any questions on that survey. And thank you to everyone who's already filled that out. And those are all the updates that I have.
Lisa,
Go ahead.
was invitations to today's meeting sent out to all municipalities as well as the survey? Because I don't believe as a member of council, we received anything.
An invitation to the
elected
call.
Yes.
Yes, I believe that they've been, Dominic has that list and is sending them out, and the city is invited. I will go back and check the list. It's the continuation of the group that started meeting weekly during COVID for COVID updates, and we have continued and moved to a monthly meeting. It's just an update call.
Thank you.
I see Joel and Rod.
Well, just to add, typically it's the chief executive that gets the message, and it's up to them to pass it on to the other electeds in the municipality.
Oh, thank you, Joel.
Rod, go ahead.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Well, we've had a bit of transition, so I'm not sure both in chief executive as well as chief of staff. So there might have been a disconnect in the process.
Okay, that explains it. Thank you. Joel and Ron.
Okay, any other comments, questions?
I wondered, did you mention, Lisa, because I confess I was only half listening, what the status is of the broadband initiative that Nick is heading up?
I do not. Is that on the agenda for, it's not on today's agenda. I don't have an update on that. I know that Nick and Katie provide periodic updates at the PDAC meetings. So I can look into that a little further.
I see we have a broadband committee report, but I don't know.
Right, I think
Yeah.
that's what Mark has his hand up for.
Let's see what Mark has to say.
Hi, Joe. Yeah. Lisa already stole my broadband report. So Joel and I didn't meet with Nick recently, but I did ask him, and he said that the survey that Lisa mentioned, they're trying to complete that by the end of the month. So if we could make an effort to re-advertise that to our communities, that might be helpful. So that's my report.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, I had a question.
Okay.
My clerk wondered if the county was making and had made any progress on the discussion about potentially taking over the renaming of properties or the assigning of numbers, street assignments. She would be delighted to get that off her plate if the county is going in that direction. I just wondered if there was any progress on that, or if we could talk about it at a future meeting.
I can add that as something to look into further, Caitlin. I don't have an answer off the top of my head, but I can bring that back.
Well, you would make her holiday wishes all come true, I'm sure, if that became something you guys wanted to do. Thanks so much.
Sure.
I think Jason had his hand up.
Yeah, so we're sharing our household survey data with county for the broadband survey, because we did one a mailing to town-wide in 2019 as part of our survey. I've told the group that's doing the survey for the county that that's probably the best way to get the data they're looking for. I don't know if it doesn't seem like they're doing a mail survey though. It seems like they're just doing something online, which you're gonna miss, a lot of people just if you just only do it online. And
Well, certainly an online survey is going to miss people who are having trouble getting internet connection.
Exactly.
So that was so anyhow, they spoke with Ryan Garrison from Hunt, who's going to give them the data. We may have already done. And then we just need to figure out as far as the county recovery fund, we need to figure out what happened there, because we apparently something was submitted to it made it to the MRV group, but I don't know what happened. I think Sean and Dan Klein all were trying to figure that out. Lisa, you might hear from me and Dan Lamb about that too the next day or so.
Yeah, we just got the email from you this morning, Jason. So we're
Okay.
MRB is looking into it, and we'll get back to you.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, great. Any more questions? Well, thank you, Lisa, for your report. And we'll move on to Joel. You wanted to, was it Joel or is it, no, I'm sorry, yeah, Robert
Yeah.
Lynch, sorry.
I just wanted to give everyone an update on an item we discussed at a prior meeting and was discussed today at the Government Operations Committee of the County Legislature. And it was the local advisory boards on assessment review. And most municipal representatives will know that traditionally, once a year in the spring, there is a local advisory board appointed for each town that will take complaints from property owners who believe they were wrongly assessed. The advisory committee has no final power. It can just write a recommendation that's sent on to grievance day where an official determination on assessment is made. For several years, the process was suspended and the local advisory boards were not held. They were held again at the assessment department's request in 2022, but the turnout was rather low. In some cases, some towns had no people grieving at all. And in Enfield's case, I think there were a couple, three. As a result, Jay Franklin, the director of assessment, had recommended today to the committee of the county legislature that the process be suspended, that there be no, in 2023, there be no local boards. He thinks that they've outlived their usefulness. He also thinks that they waste staff time because assessment representatives have to be sent to each and every one of these 10 local hearings. And he recommended that the county consider not having them. I guess it is optional according to the revised county charter as to whether these boards may be held or not. The upshot of today's meeting was there was no recommendation, there was no resolution, but there was an informal consensus that most likely a resolution will be presented to the committee in early January that would suspend the local advisory boards for 2023 while the county legislature and this government operations committee considers revising the county charter so as to streamline the process. There was some talk of even consolidating some of these local advisory board meetings for multiple towns. An example given was Dryden, Groton, and Lansing. It was just an idea, a hypothetical, but it was something that was being considered. I will let you know that our Enfield Town Board on the 26th of October passed a resolution that supported the continuation of these local advisory boards of assessment review. So we in Enfield have a position on it, but we're open to hear what will be discussed and perhaps decided by the county legislature in January. And with that, I will open it up to any questions that I might be able to answer, or Lisa might be able to answer because she attended the meeting as well.
I see Shauna has her hand up.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't have any questions, but I'm happy to share my experience. I've actually gone to 3 of these over the years. For 2 years, we didn't do it due to COVID. And out of the 3 years that I've done it, we've sat for 3 hours. There were 4 legislators in mine, 4 different staff people. And 3 years, we've had 1 person walk in. And that was the full town of Ithaca. I think what typically happens is that if people have questions about their assessment, our assessment office is ranked throughout the state very, very highly. And I think people feel a comfort of either calling, emailing, or stopping by our assessment office and having that conversation. Jay Franklin is absolutely always willing to sit down with people, as is Irene or anyone in his office. And I think that's, quite honestly, why we see so many few people at these board functions. I'm always happy to go to them, Bob, but I think if we look at who's actually showing up, I meant for there to be 6 people, 7 people hanging around for 3 hours over 3 years and only 1 person coming, it's just not, it doesn't seem effective. So I, for one, would be against us continuing with us having such great communication with our constituents and having so many different lines of communication for our assessment office.
Mark?
Just to follow up on that, Shauna, my understanding is anyone with a grievance could contact the assessment office anytime in the year. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right. And I think 99 times out of 100, they're actually able to figure out something, whether it's, moving down the assessment, helping the person understand the assessment, even helping the person navigate how to appeal their assessment. I mean, there are just so many avenues for people to use. And I think as long as, they could do it any time of the year as well. And so I think, the fact that office is so open to the community I personally have not seen a need for the boards.
Thanks. Thank you.
Hey, Robert, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I did, because I had one further thought, and we'll see. This year, according to what Mr. Franklin has suggested, there will be changes in the way that you can lodge a complaint and deal with it. And furthermore, there'll be a new procedure instituted whereby every property will be reassessed, and some will be reassessed by means of sampling, because you'll sample a similar home down the street and equate their rise in assessment with your own. So there may be changes this year. There may be more interest in these local boards, and maybe the only way we're going to find out is to hold them one more year before we revise the system and see if there is increased interest. And if there is not, then maybe they've outlived their usefulness.
Okay. If there's no further questions, I think we should move on. Thank you. Jay Smith reports on the Highway Department collaborative work across municipal boundaries.
I guess that's me. Jeff, not Jay, Jeff Smith.
Mhm.
Call me Jeff.
Mhm.
Looking around, hi, everybody. I've know most of you have run into you at for various reasons, not always county, but some of us have crossed paths over the various years. I was asked to attend today to talk about, really, there's a lot of different words used for the type of discussion or presentation I'm doing. It's mutual aid, shared services, cooperation. It's all that. And I really think that in the highway departments across the county, we do a really good job. For the most part, I did mark down several, notes to kind of follow along to give you an idea of how broad it is. But I know, the thing I want to really make clear is that it's never limited to what I can think of or what's brought up. It's always changing. There's always new things coming out of Albany and different changes in our industry and things like that bring us together with what makes sense at the time with various towns, all the towns. We have a pretty good network. I feel the top of the list is one that's pretty obvious, and most of you probably know some degree about, and that's our snow and ice operation, clearing of the roads. We contract with all except for a couple towns that are right in our location vicinity to perform snow and ice control on county roads. That's a really good process. We work well with all the towns. It's a 3-year renewable contract. We're going into the first year of a 3-year renewal. We renewed them all throughout this year. Some of you may have passed resolutions or something along those lines. Along with a lot of, included in the snow and ice, we do a lot of equipment sharing. Probably the most common area that we share our equipment is with trucking, moving material, providing various materials, and this is across the board, all the towns, and it's both directions. We can get a request from a town that's doing a chip seal on a road that's looking for trucking, or we can ask towns wherever we're working on a county road. Usually the area towns are asked first, and then we kind of start broadening our request out if we need to, for various operations. We have in the past loaned out our excavators, great alls, mostly our track excavators normally. And there's several pieces of our equipment that if we do loan it out, it's with an operator. We don't necessarily always supply equipment without a knowledgeable, trained operator. Usually the towns are welcome with that. Some of the towns have very good operators of that piece of equipment that we're well aware of, and in those cases we will. It's never across the board always the same. But we will definitely share loaders, sweepers. We've loaned out our paver, that sort of thing. Other than that, professional advice is kind of how I coined it. It's loosely termed, but what we know, what other towns know, we share our resources as far as that knowledge that we have, experienced something before. Sometimes we're the collector of or the information, and there might be a town struggling one side of the county that doesn't know that the other town just finished a project very similar, so we may connect them, or we've seen it in another county or heard about it. It's really just kind of an information, and that really includes myself to some degree, our engineers, our road crew supervisors. It even actually drills down to some of the mechanics at towns will call our mechanics and do like shop talk and see, how they maybe went about fixing something that's similar, that sort of thing. It's really, that's kind of hard to measure, but it's very broad, very across the board. As well, we share information, grant opportunities, new legislations, mandates, things like that. Sometimes we're the first to hear, sometimes we're not. I generally try to share that out. We all are on a kind of what I consider a town or a highway listserv that we share information. We do meet every other month as well, face to face, but most of that organized information that comes out would be in the way of an email, sharing that sort of thing. And that area kind of would include some of what most of you have heard about, the Bridge New York grant program, where we've and through our MPO, there's also been a few instances where there's been a small town bridge that they were able to get on our tip. And when it goes through that federal aid process, we're a little more familiar than some of the towns, and we'll help the towns to manage that. And generally that's gone really, really well, and we're happy about the towns taking on that. It's certainly helped the county with some of those bridges and other things. The other thing that is it's an annual, we do an annual material and services bid. So that it has the piggyback language. We do all our services as far as vendor placement of asphalt, various services, striping of roads, and then also material purchases as far as purchasing FOB asphalt and gravels and your road sand, abrasives, salt, things like that. And out of that bid, the county does the bid every year annually. And then the towns are able to piggyback and purchase at that pricing that's on the bid award through those vendors. I want to say again that I think we're good, but it's always changing. There's always new people coming in, new elected officials at the town highway superintendent level with varying degrees of experience. There's some towns that are well-versed and have a lot of resources, and there's some that are not as large and don't have the resources, and we try and fill the gap. And so it's not an even slate across for each town, but we try and fill whatever gaps that's necessary and really helps out. I feel like, and I say this a lot, that what we do, what the county highway department does, and what the town highway departments do is very, very similar. It's maintenance of roads and snow and ice. It's ditching, it's clearing of brush, trees, and canopy along the right of way, replacing of culvert pipes, things like that. It's managing our larger structures and things like that. So the state does things a little different, although we cooperate and work with the state on a lot of things. I'm in contact with the state many times, as my supervisors and things here are. And I think there are a lot of towns that are also in contact with state. Not that they're not in the area, they're certainly here, but their operation and what they do is a little bit different than where I feel like we're very, very much in line with a lot of things. When you get into some of the villages, the city of Ithaca, what they do is a little bit different than what the towns and the county highway do. We have a lot of the same equipment, but when you're talking about closed drainages and utilities and things within cities and villages, their level of road work and things gets completely different, completely complicated, very difficult, but there are some similarities. And we do, when we are able, we work with the county, the city, we're in touch with them. We do have a few ways that we work together, as well as the villages. Some of the villages are very small. Freeville has 1 employee. A lot of times if Village of Freeville is looking for something, that individual will go through the town of Dryden. And then if the town of Dryden can't or thinks that we could help them, we'll hear about it that way. But there's all these different avenues and connections and networks that we use almost on a daily basis, up and down all the municipalities in the highway side. So I'm able to answer any questions. That's kind of a quick blip, and appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you all today.
Well, thank you for that brief update. Does anyone have any questions, comments? Rod?
So thank you, Jeff. I think I was the one who reached out to you to say they're interested in this. Is there anything that you feel, it sounds like it works well. Is there anything that you feel could, with a little extra attention, work even better in terms of communication across the municipalities related to highway issues?
More money. It's always, I feel like we do a good job, and I've said that a few times, but there's really nothing to hold it against or compare it to. It's hard to say, how can we do it better? When we do, I'm trying to give you like an example of a hurdle or something, or a difficulty we've had. And I think the funding opportunities are very difficult. The rules are always changing. We are in the middle of very recent another round of Bridge New York grants, and the rules, it's a whole different way of doing things this time around. And so I think we're working through it. I think in the end we'll get through it fine. It seems, generally speaking, it seems the funding is a little more limited than it has been in the past in the bridge side of things. The culvert side is very much similar to the old way of doing things. It's regional, and there's a pot of about $14 million. But you're in competition to everyone in Region 3. In the bridge side of things, they've given the MPO $4.5 million. And in the past, I'm sure most of you are aware, we would look at through our county bridge list and really try and pick the best candidates, but we would try and maximize our number of applications to really put as much need out there. And we've been very successful. Town of Dryden's been very successful. Town of Ulysses has done a bridge for us. And then, and so it's worked well. It's very much accelerated when these bridges were able to be replaced. The city has also been very successful as a bridge owner in capturing some of those Bridge New York bridge grant funds. The $4.5 million that's coming, it's 4.58 million. Number one, we know that amount. It's coming to the MPO. There's a positive way in that we know that we're getting that much, but as you know, bridge cost, it's about 1.5 bridges. So we really need to kind of figure out what's best for the areas within the MPO and see how far we can get that money to go. And again, it's in the very early stages of that where we're working out the details. And so that probably didn't really answer fully your question, but we're if we're open to suggestions. I think that generally supporting new superintendents that come in is something that we do right away. We reach out to them right away. We get them on the phone. People stop by and see them. I think if who's in touch with these individuals, new people coming in, it wouldn't hurt to maybe encourage them to know that we're here to help, and feel free to give us a call whenever they can.
Okay, I see Joel's hand.
Yeah, I'm gonna sort of raised a broader question. I mean, I have had people who visit this area from other parts of the country where the highway is handled at a county level, and there is no, town. And we have this patchwork of, county and local municipality highway departments. And my impression is that, you all have done a great job in sort of coordinating and, cooperation amongst the organizations that are out there. But does it come up occasionally, or even does it to even think about whether it would make sense to consolidate some of these operations rather than have so many of them I mean, the case in point being, we've got county roads and we've got town roads, and, each other's equipment sometimes traverses the same roads on the way to dealing with their stuff, which wouldn't be the case if it was all under one jurisdiction. But I just wonder whether does that ever come up as a topic of conversation, or?
There's definitely been, and I've heard about and been aware of opportunities where there's been maybe a small village that's been absorbed into the town highway operation. That happens. I haven't really heard of crossing boundary lines to towns, consolidating things like that, but I've certainly heard about villages. And I've also heard about where villages have grown into its own DPW because the village cooperation line really isn't getting the service it needs to from the town. So it really has to do with level of services and what's not getting done, what's getting done can be getting done cheaper. I think it has to do with if the tax base within the municipality is supporting it. If it's not, you really have to start looking at other ways. And I am very cautious in the size and the manageability, and our operation, if we start getting bigger and taking things over and we'd be absorbing, we're going to need that many loaders, we're going to need that many trucks. I feel like we're always kind of running at a minimum. I don't know that we have a lot of extra, and so there may be savings, but it may be at the cost of services. And snow and ice is a really kind of easier way to picture that. Is if people can live with the plow truck not going by their house so often, we could probably get away with one or two less plow trucks. But that's a hard decision, and it's hard to go that way. But that's really what you're looking at. And then that's a snow and ice application. And then you'd have to look at broadly, the pavement, the ditching, the trees, all of that, each one of that, all of us do, we can always improve. We can always get better and use our time better and, have better equipment and, be more productive. But consolidating things, I would be very cautious about that. Sometimes it does work. Sometimes it makes some sense, for sure.
I see Caitlin's hand.
Thanks.
Hi, I had kind of a different question. We're my highway department, we have a job posted right now, and it's an interesting hiring market. I'm sure everybody else appreciates. I wondered if you in the highway at the county level, if you ever bring people on and then provide them the training they need and the certifications they need as part of their job education package, or if you are always requiring people to enter into their positions having already achieved that, because the certification processes have gotten more expensive to operate some of this equipment. And so we're kind of playing around with the idea of helping provide that education. But I wondered if that was something that the county also did, or if you have to come in with the certification.
So that's a really good question. And I could have actually, I could have answered Rob with this one before. Rod, I'm sorry. That's really one of our difficulties across the board is manpower. And I think it's across the board in every every sector of everywhere right now. But we're part of our difficulty is the CDL and how everyone has, or the federal government has made obtaining your CDL much more difficult. They've required classroom and field training. When it first came out, It was very stringent. It was, it was going to cost $5,000 or $6,000 to go to a truck driving school for each individual, things like that. We've been working on that, trying to swim through the weeds and really get to the bottom of it. I do have some positive news. Recently, we've been able to, we have one individual, and this is actually the origination of this came from the Lansing. This is one of example of how we kind of all talk and we're working on this issue. One is the lack of applicants. But number two is that obtaining of a CDL. And to answer that part of your question is we are able to hire in individuals in a seasonal worker role. And then our county does work with that individual if they're willing to obtain a CDL. And we've been doing that for several years now. I don't know if there's any other municipalities right now in the county offering that as far as taking a CDL permit holder and putting them in their truck, giving them driving time. But we've been doing it for a while. We've had a lot of success in actually retaining of that individual. And I think a lot of our individuals that we've had successfully have gone on to work for other municipalities in the area and filled vacancies outside as well. Back to the good news is that we've had just recently an individual, we've found and located a website online where the cost is about $300-400 to take an online course. We did cover that cost. This individual has gone through that and got the certificate of completion for that online course, which completes the classroom portion. And then we had to have that person actually take the permit exam, pass the permit exam, get them in a vehicle, and we log their vehicle hours, which was approved by DMV so that they could then sign up for their road test. The person has now taken the road test and passed. We now have, I don't want to tell anybody this, we have a seasonal worker here now that has a CDL, and we're hoping to retain that individual. That's one person, to be clear. And I see that getting broader, and we are talking to other town highway superintendents about that ability. We're not keeping it a secret. We heard about it bits and pieces through the town of Lansing, and we're talking with other towns about doing that. That is an area that could very much have some improvement, have some focus. I have and others have talked with local BOCES trying to develop a program, things like that we could take our applicants to, send our applicants to obtain the CDL. So there's a lot to be unknown because it's kind of new requirements that people are figuring out. But it's also was very expensive and scary at the beginning. And it was at a time when we were having trouble getting any applicants. So the timing of it from the federal government was very, very poor, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinion. But I saw you. I thought, do you have any more questions?
That's really helpful. Thank you, because that's exactly the position we're in. So I'm going to talk to Scott.
Okay.
Put him in contact back with you about that. That's a great plan. Thank you.
Yep.
Excellent. Anybody have any other? I see Robert.
Yes, I think that Caitlin and I are going to be in competition because we've got a position that's open in the Enfield Highway Department too. And I will pass along to our superintendent, Mr. Rollins, what Jeff is related, because it might help filling that position. But thank you, Jeff, for all the cooperation you've provided our town, and I'm sure other towns. And I know the cooperative bidding, the county contracts has helped us a lot, because when, for example, with asphalt, we needed it, and we were able to rely on the county contract and get a better price than we would have had we gone on the open market ourselves and taken all that time to put a project out to bid. So thank you.
Joel, you got your hand up?
Yeah, the back and forth here about the CDLs brought to mind that because of such a shortage of CDLs, we're almost in competition with each other as to what people are willing to pay. I'm hearing it from some of our highway workers. We know I could get so much more if I worked for the town of Ithaca. If you're looking for people, it makes it easier to shop higher wages. I don't know how if there's any way to deal with that, except that it does put it puts the unions in particular in a good position to bargain for higher wages when the contracts come up. But
money is key as well. We've lost some of our employees. We're in constant threat of losing some of our employees to some of the area towns.
Yeah, and of course, it's not just the towns; it's also the trucking companies and
yeah.
And I gather, and Bob might comment on this, that TCAT has had the same issue with trying to get their bus drivers to hang around because they need the same licenses.
Yeah.
Seeing no more hands, thank you, Jeff, for that. And I want to, mirror what Robert was saying about how helpful it is to work with the county on highway stuff. I know we do many of the same things, using the contracts to buy our purchases. We work with you on snow removal and, share equipment and stuff. And, it's a good working relationship. So thank you.
Thank you all. It was a pleasure being here.
So
Thanks, John.
Darby, Darby, you're up next, building code administration study.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for the handoff, Jeff. At your last meeting in October, I reported on this building code administration study that the county has funding to do for this coming year. And unfortunately, I cannot disclose the consultant that we're working with yet because we just had some delays in reference checks. So we're not able to share that, but I did want to just still come here today and remind everyone that this project will be kicking off in January and beginning of the year. And the first step that the team will be doing is developing the process and the timeline for reaching out to the municipal officials and code officers. And so each municipality can expect to see a survey coming to your town or village or city. And that's going to be developed to facilitate the data collection and make sure that comes in a uniform manner. And that will enable the consulting team and us to be able to do the interviews in a more focused way. So really focusing on comments from the code officers and municipal officials. So we'll be looking at workflows and needs and barriers and opportunities for collaboration. So this is just really quick to say, stay tuned and let your code officials know, if you haven't already, that this study is coming up and that you'll be seeing a survey early in the year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Darby? I'm seeing no hands, so thank you, Darby, for that update, and we'll look forward to what you bring to us in the coming year.
All right, great, thanks.
So onward to subcommittees. I assume, Mark, that you've basically given your subcommittee report already for broadband?
The broadband one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm all done with that.
Okay. So next is cybersecurity, municipal information.
Hi, we did not have a chance to meet in the last 5 or 6 weeks it's been since the last TCOG meeting. But I can tell you that we're using Ulysses has an RFP out that closes in a couple of weeks. And we're hoping I shared the draft of our RFP for cyber insurance and coverage, or not insurance, but a cyber plan with other members of the committee. We are getting word that as everybody else has to, I know, go through their insurance process, that we've heard some early rumblings that what will be covered under cyber insurance for municipalities is evolving industry-wide, not just related to our particular town. And so I've been monitoring that. And one of the things I think that our group can ultimately do is help provide resources. There are a lot of resources available, but they don't necessarily make it to our inboxes. And for the small municipalities, we don't necessarily have somebody on staff who is watching some of the resources available. And so I was just going to pop into the chat some a good kind of clearinghouse that's been provided by the state that I have noticed has been updated. And they do update with new trainings and things like that periodically. I know I've been getting some rant. Here's a local training you can do on fill in the blank. And I don't know about you, but I get so many of those emails that they get kind of lost in the shuffle. And so I just wanted to direct you to this website that the state does provide that has some fairly useful information that might be pertinent to your organization.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Caitlin? Thank you for that update, and we'll move on back to Mark for emergency planning and services.
Okay, yeah, so I think I may have already reported, but the county did fund an emergency planner position for next year to address, look at evaluate solutions for countywide first response to support first response. So we're very delighted with that. And I know that Mike Steitley, I think, has been working with Lisa and has drafted a job description. And so that's in progress. Our committee will be meeting a week from tomorrow. And so I expect to get updates then. We, our TCOG Emergency Services Planning Subcommittee, will continue to stay engaged in an advisory role in this process. So that's where it's at. That's going to be moving forward in 2023. I think we're all very excited about it, and that's about all I have, I think. And Rorden may want to chime in here. I don't know.
Rorden, did you have a comment?
I don't have anything to add to that. No.
Great.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions or comments from Mark or Rorden? Seeing none, thank you for that report. And we'll move on to Rod and Energy Committee.
Yeah, there's no report. We did those 2 solar webinars, but we haven't done anything since then. So no report.
Okay, thank you. Onward to transportation. Robert?
Yes, there isn't too much of a report here either, except that, as probably everyone is aware, TCAT has had problems with staffing and, more importantly, getting spare parts because of supply chain problems. And as a result, they've had to have continuing week-by-week cutbacks in what was already a constrained service for the fall runs. And it has disproportionately affected those runs that affect portions of the city of Ithaca and the Cornell campus. There's one that goes out to Jacksonville and Ulysses that has some minor impact, and also to Lansing. But it's a continuing problem, and they hope that get it rectified, but it's going to take some time. And they've given us no indication as to when these week-by-week cutbacks will end. I think going into 2023, something that our committee has to look into, and I encourage increased membership in the committee, because it's more or less a committee of one right now, is to determine some way to provide an intercity bus transportation hub somewhere in the city of Ithaca. And I'm not even going to say where it's going to be. I know long range plans say you could do something when they rebuild the Seneca Street garage. That seems like an awful long ways out, but we can talk about that more in 2023.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Robert? Seeing none, thank you. Oh, Mark, I see you raising your hand.
I just have an off-the-wall question. What's the status of the old bus station down there that, across from where Green Star used to be?
You mean where the, the old rail station next to the West End branch of the bank?
Right.
As far as I know, it is empty right now. I guess the bank owns it, but I don't know what plans they have for it. And it would be intriguing if we could somehow reactivate that on a short-term basis. I'd love to see that happen. And I'd love to see somebody take the initiative to see if that might be a possibility, because it would tide us over until something better comes along.
It's all about finances. The old bus system, they sold tickets in person, and that financed having an office open and a depot open and stuff. Now that everybody's buying tickets online, you don't have a revenue stream to keep a bus station open, and that's what closed that station down. And it's what's made it hard for the city and county to keep something open downtown, because there's just no revenue stream anymore, but lots of expenses to keep a place open, even nominal hours for when the buses are coming in.
That certainly begs the question, because if that's the case, how would that be in any way different if a new transit hub were created?
Basically, you need a space for the buses. And then sometimes you can get a business to do it as an adjunct, in which they help people out and sell tickets as a side, as opposed to trying to maintain an entire space just on ticket sales. I know they were trying to do that with the pharmacy downtown, but they closed. And so you look for another business that has a similar model where they can just add on a little bit of extra work, as opposed to trying to keep a place open on a very small revenue stream.
Intriguing ideas for 2023, I guess.
Indeed, we will be busy for 2023. Are there any more questions or comments for Robert? Seeing none, thank you, Robert, and looking forward to 2023 to see what it brings. Water quality, I don't see anyone listed. I don't think we have any meetings from them or a report.
I could provide a brief update.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Most recently, the Water Resources Council received a presentation on wetlands mapping on the state level, and the changes in definition on the federal, state, and state level with regards to wetlands. I'm going to skip over that briefly and just talk about a letter that the WRC Executive Committee sent out today, having to do with the new state regulations on PFAS testing for public and water purveyors, both large and small. The requirements, I believe, is perceived that it will have a huge or a very large financial burden, especially on small water purveyors. As far as I understand, there are 20 labs certified in the United States that can receive and test water samples that are now being required, I believe, at least twice a year from all water purveyors across the state. And I believe this is also to meet federal regulations with regards to PFAS. So there is concern of the cost of the test, the ability to process all the tests that will be coming through with these new regulations, and also concern as to the cost of implementation of how to treat PFAS if found in water sources. I'd be happy to share the letter that we sent out earlier today.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Cynthia?
I might ask I know a little bit about this, but I'm a little bit. So we have a very small water system in the town of Danby, and the cost is a significant concern.
Mm-hmm.
That as I recall, looking at the information, there's a pretty high upfront cost, sort of get baseline information, but then depending on the outcome, you didn't have to test as often going forward. Do you remember that context?
I believe that's correct, yes.
So that helps.
It does, but I think just the sampling is between $350 to $700 per sample. And then, of course, if you do have if you do find a exceedance and have to perform follow-up and repeat samples, of course, you have to multiply that by 1 to 3 times again to get those samples in and processed. And of course, there is the concern of water purveyors having to address this while also having to address the new, I believe, the lead and copper rules that will be coming online relatively shortly as well.
Right, if you find it, then what? Yeah, that's the,
Right, and there's also a notification process that is required where purveyors will have to send notices out to all of their clients and customers. And one of the concerns is that there is not a health notification requirement in terms of saying very explicitly that we have found these levels in your water supply and there's an associated health concern that we can verify. There's no language that clarifies that even though they receive a notice, it is not necessarily a cause for alarm that there might be something found at a detectable level, that those levels may not result in a negative health effect. So we have in this letter requested clarification on the language to be provided if a notice is required to be sent.
excellent, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you for that spontaneous report there. I know you didn't come here prepared to speak for the water committee. So seeing none, thank you. And we'll move on. And I'm going to jump to my proposal before we talk about officers and leaders. I'm suggesting that we switch next year's schedule so that we start in January instead of February and still do the every other month. But if we do that, it gets rid of the August meeting, which has always been a hard one to get people to attend to. It also gets rid of the December meeting, which it's hard for people to attend. And it also allows us to meet in January to pick our officers for the organization. And so I'm bringing that forward as a proposal for this group and would like people's thoughts and comments.
Sounds like a plan.
I just want to say that the 4th Thursday in November is going to fall on Thanksgiving. So we're still going to have to reschedule that.
Yeah.
The other option is if you want to do just the leadership, do kind of like an organizational meeting in January. We could do a short meeting in January, then still stay on the February, the other schedule. That's another option.
That's true. So it doesn't get rid of the August meeting,
It
which
does not get rid of the August.
and we can always move November forward, which is
Yeah.
not as problematic as trying to fit between Christmas
No, we
and
can still do the
Thanksgiving. So,
Like the first Thursday in December, like we've
Mhm.
been doing.
so I see Dan's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if there's any interest in starting at 4 instead of 3. Because I always teach at 3. And, just throwing it out there, if there's an interest in a little later in the day.
I could see that, though it does push the meeting later in the evening as well. So we got 2 proposals on the table. Let's get some input from some people. Thoughts?
Well,
Joel?
I like the, having the officers elected in January, particularly since the terms are until the end of December. The new officer, because it's only the vice chair that gets elected in 1 year. But and I was looking through the bylaws, it could stand a little update, that's another issue. But the way they read, each municipality is supposed to have their representative designated. And I know that didn't really happen in Danby. I'm sort of doing it because my predecessor did it. But they're supposed to be for a specified term, our secretary is supposed to have certified resolutions from the clerks of all the municipalities saying who the representative is and who the alternate is and when their terms begin and end. I'm guessing that that might not be completely up to date. Is that correct,
That-
Katrina?
Yes, that would be correct. And there again, it's each municipality, it's difficult to get that information. We do reach out annually and try to update it. But I will say that is difficult.
We always do that as part of our organizational
Yes.
stuff in January.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
reach out, and sometimes I don't get it till June, July. I mean, it comes in all year long.
Uh-huh, okay.
I do try to keep an accurate list online.
So other comments? How about, oh, go ahead, Robert.
I like the idea of odd months because it gets to be such a long haul between the meeting we're having today and the fourth Thursday in February. And I feel that kind of TCOG falls dormant for a period of almost 2 months, or almost 3 months, I should say. And it gets to be really upsetting of the schedule. And I think going to an odd month schedule, at least for me, would work better. Of course, we have to adjust the November meeting, but that should be an easy fix.
So I take that as a second to my motion.
I'll second it.
Should have done that before we talked about it.
So any other discussion on that? So the proposal will be to shift to starting in January, and then we move the November meeting to the first week in November, I guess.
First week in December.
First week in December.
Okay, do we want to go? I have the dates if we want to, I can go through.
Go ahead.
I have January 26th, March 23rd, May 25th, July 27th, September 28th. And then we can go with December 7th would be the first Thursday in December. And that avoids the Thanksgiving holiday.
Yep.
Okay. Any comments or thoughts on that? I guess we'll put it up for a vote. Everybody in favor of the new schedule? Raise your hand to say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? I guess we have a new schedule for 2023. Did anyone want to consider the proposal of moving our meetings till 4 o'clock that Dan put forward? Mark, you're in favor of it, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly could do that, and I would be willing to do that, but I don't know other people's schedules or whatever, but anyway, I'm in favor.
Tim?
Yeah, I was just going to ask what impact it would have on the staff.
Good question.
We would have to adjust our hours in the office, but I think that could be done.
The staff generally leave at 4:30, is that correct, or
Yes.
5?
Yes,
Okay.
4:30.
That's a good point.
I'm inclined to not put more work on the staff if we can
Yeah.
avoid it, would be my feeling. I know, Dan, you're having trouble making the meetings.
Yeah, I tend towards classes that go 2:45 to 4 p.m. And so occasionally I have a conflict like today, so, but Jason's happy to show up.
Okay, Don, I see your hand up.
I'm in favor of the later in the day, the better.
Okay,
It's tough for me to come cleaned up.
I hear that. Well, I hear Dan put a motion forward. Do we have a second to Dan's motion at this point?
Sure.
So I see Mark doing a second to moving our meetings till 4 o'clock. Any more discussion on that? Robert?
I might have a conflict because I have another community meeting that always meets on the fourth Thursday of the month. And it just moved its hours up from 6:30 to 5:15. So it would really be tight and there might be an overlap, and that's an in-person meeting. And so I might have a problem attending those two meetings.
Okay, let me ask you a different question. Is there any conflicts with this room in terms of moving the time? Okay,
We're good.
okay. Even on the new dates?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess,
Any other, go ahead.
I
Mark?
mean, yeah, I guess I'm, just considering the proposal broadly, whether for most of us, 3 o'clock works better or 4 o'clock. I'm feeling like 3 o'clock works better. Most people.
Well, we could do this vote one of two ways. We could have people raise their hands for 3 o'clock and raise their hands for 4 o'clock, or we could just vote on the proposal straight up. I'm inclined to have people raise their hands for which time works better for them. Does that feel comfortable?
Yes.
I'm seeing lots of nodding heads. So if there's no more discussion, raise your hand if you're happy with 3 o'clock. Are one of you taking down names?
Just trying to keep them up. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Plus me.
Okay. 8.
So 8 at 3, okay. 4 o'clock. Let's see hands for 4 o'clock. 2, 3.
Jason raised his hand.
Jason raised his hand, yeah.
Yeah, you might ask the question a different way. I mean, people who would be okay with 4 o'clock, because I mean, some of us would probably go either way.
It seems like the preponderance is towards 3 o'clock, but
Yeah, I mean, if you left it up to me, it'd probably be 7, but
you could make that proposal, but I don't think it would get a ton of support.
well, the implications for staff would be serious, but
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I guess we're going to stay with 3 o'clock. And so then comes the question of leadership, because I'm stepping off as co-chair. Joel's coming on as co-chair, but we need someone, I forget what that other position's called.
Vice chair.
Vice chair. Thank you. We need someone for vice chair, which I guess we can pick in January, but it'd be nice if we had an idea of who wanted to be in that position now so that we can start, getting them ready for the January meeting.
And we're prepared to make phone calls if no one comes forward so that we can propose a name at the January meeting. So we're hoping that someone or some folks might be interested. It's pretty easy, right, Joel?
It's very easy. It's very
especially
easy.
the vice chair position.
It's a 2-year commitment, and after the 2 years, you're off the hook for a while.
Yeah, there's nothing in the bylaws to say how long you're off the hook for.
Isn't it a 3-year commitment? Because you're
Essentially, yeah.
yeah. So you're a vice chair for 1 year, and then you co-chair for
That's
2
true,
years.
for 2 years, yeah. So it's a 3-year commitment. Sorry.
That's okay.
3 years at a time. You could turn around and start all over again after 3 years.
I suggest Gordon Hart because of all that he's done for emergency services.
What do you think, Gordon?
I'm next year's chair of the health consortium, so I'm just trying to think about time, but
Well, I can tell you that being vice chair is not horribly demanding.
It's not a lot of time commitment. It really isn't. I think I may spend a half hour.
That's how I got roped into this 15 years ago. It's just one meeting a month, hour and a half.
It's really a handful of emails before the meeting, and then you have to chair the meeting from time to time. That's what the commitment really comes down to.
That's fine if no one else is going to push me out of the way and jump in front for the vice chair spot, then I can do it.
Give a second.
Okay, I'll second that motion. So do we want to vote Gordon in as vice chair here, or we want to wait till
Or do you
January?
want to wait until January?
Well, yeah, let's wait till January. So
Okay.
Gordon, think about it. We put you on the spot. You should think about
I
it.
think so too.
Well, no, and in all seriousness, the reason I didn't weigh in on the whole 3 o'clock versus 4 o'clock thing is I do have the advantage of working entirely by appointment. So it's just a matter of finding a hole in the calendar for meetings. So if I know with enough advance notice like this, then I can make sure I don't have anyone schedule any appointments for me at either 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock on the fourth Thursday.
Mhm.
Okay, well, I think we have a volunteer who is considering it, and we'll discuss it further in January. Do we have any agenda items for the next meeting other than electing officials?
We had the Emergency Management Comprehensive Plan update. Mike Stitley wasn't able to make it today, but he did say he could come to the next meeting, so.
Okay. And of course, people can add things to the agenda over the next course of the month. We've added things as late as the afternoon of the meeting.
Mhm.
And then I could check to see about the countywide addressing that Caitlin had asked about.
That'd be good,
and see if
thank
we
you.
Get an update on that.
That would be Greg, right? Greg Potter?
I think that's who gave it. I think it was
Yeah.
Greg.
Right.
Okay, if there's nothing else, does anybody have anything else, or can we call it an early evening?
Well, one more thing. I think that you deserve a note of thanks for your willingness to have served in that 3-year rotation. Now you're rotating off, Joe. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Second that.
Well, with that, thank you all, and I will see you all in January, and hope you have a wonderful holiday, however you choose to celebrate it.
Thank you very much.
You bet. You too.